Does everybody agree that time brings about a change?
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't, it will with or without you. So whether you agree or not, doesn't matter. Time brings about a change. If you just happen to be sitting around with your ears open and your mind free, then gather the sounds of my words as they flow across my lips, gaining expressions through my voice. I said, if you just happen to be sitting around with your ears open and your mind free, then gather the sounds of my words as they flow across my lips, gaining expressions through my voice.
She's there through my ups and downs, and when other pups try to hound my queen standing with her crown, I never have to worry because she's quick to scurry away any stray. So I'm there for her, I'm in prayer for her, I stare at her.
You know, so this is just a sample of, you know, his history, and he can tell you a little bit more, and he's going to give you a chance to ask him some questions. But I want to start with his education. Now, he took art and majored in art in these places, but he actually is a self-taught artist. So he began learning the craft even before he started school. He's won many awards. There's a short list here. Most of the exhibitions and shows that he entered, he came in first place or won best in show. So like 1996, 1997, the Chicago Black Creativity Exhibition held at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, first place. The Indiana Black Expo Exhibition, again, first place. And then in 2000, in the Indiana Expo, they had a best of the best. So all the previous winners entered the contest again, and he came in first again. 2003, Black Expo in Louisville, Kentucky, first place winner. And then in 2004, he won the Governor's Prize with that painting right there. And then there's a picture with him and Bob Taft, if you haven't seen that yet. And then that painting hung in the Governor's Mansion for 1 year, is that right? So that's, again, just a short list. I mean, he's done many commissions and sales, prominent business people from Dayton, Chicago, Illinois. He's done, since 2002, he has the commission to do the judges' portraits that hang in the Municipal Court Building in Sydney, Ohio. So that's what, 18 years running. And the list goes on, but now I want to introduce the man and then come up and talk and give you a chance to find out.
Well, maybe
more.
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe wonder who is he talking about? He was talking about me. Well, I'm gonna sit down here for a moment. Yes, there. I was thinking about what would I share other than the work itself with folks. What would they be interested in? You know, how or why I did the things that I've done in art, where it came from. I'd really like any questions about me or about the work, and I'd like to respond to that for anyone who has any questions.
You know I got a question.
Okay, I want my dinner though. But
You really do. But my thought when I first walked in your gallery was your conception. How is it that your mind takes you, or if you can even explain it, to the spots that you have? Because as we were going through the gallery, I saw various street locations, and it brought to my mind my youth. It was a great feeling because I remember Dayton when we were the city beautiful. And so I just want to know, where do you take yourself? How do you exclude everything else around you that's not as positive as your paintings are?
Well, when I started doing this thing, I didn't even know what it was I was doing. My brothers and I were, we thought we were going to be like the Temptations back in the 60s. We had singing groups, and we thought that we were going to go in that direction. And my father, who is a singer, or was a singer at the time, he had a gospel group, and that's what I heard as a child. I'm the youngest of 8 brothers and sisters, and so I was the baby in the family. Didn't realize what it was I was hearing, but I'd always heard this music thing going on, and I also smelled the smell of oil paint, and saw my older brothers doing this artwork, and that was hanging on the walls around me as a child. Didn't have any idea that I was going to go in any particular direction with any of it. But it was something that my older brothers did. It was something that I just felt before I even thought of what it is I'd like to say about anything around me. It's just that I just felt this is what I should do because that's what they did. I just had a brother that's close to me who just died last month. My brother Sherrill, he was an artist. And another brother whose name was Ray Williams, who graduated from Wright State. He was a sculptor, an artist. And these people, I thought that I would continue to do what I was doing to prove to them, because I was the baby. It's always like, you get on, man, get on back. You can't, you're not gonna be able to do. And I wanted to prove to them that I was just as good, and I could be just as good as they were. But they got a chance to graduate from high school before me. They could go to Central State. At that time, it was a real big deal. They could go and do things before I did as a child. And as a matter of fact, I remember things like, you all, many of you don't remember anything about it. NCR used to have shows every week, and the kids could, all of us kids could go to that show for free, and then they give you a candy bar when you leave the theater. Yeah, that was just something we had to do every weekend. It was a big deal. But my brothers would get on their bicycles and hurry up and take off, because my mother would try to make them take me along, and they would really hate doing that. So they get up and leave me, and I'd be standing there crying, you know, and wanting to go and wanting to be a big brother like them. So throughout the times that my brothers were winning art competitions and what have you, and doing all these things in art, I don't know, I don't want to say it's because I wanted to show them, but it was important to me that I did just as good, or hopefully better than any of them ever did. And I really don't want to accept that that's what motivated me to continue to work as hard as I did, because I loved them all, but I didn't have the luxury of someone saying to me, well, Ronnie, you keep doing what you're doing, because someday you're going to be real good at what you're doing. No, that would, my mother, at the time that I was coming up in the 60s, there were places like McCall's Corporation, NCR, all these jobs in construction and whatever it is you wanted, you could go to any of those jobs. And and I love her, but she was a very practical person. And she'd say, well, you would put this paintbrush and this pencil down and go get you a job. You know, and I love her for that, but I defied that, and she, you know, it was either that or at the time it was hell no, we're not going to Vietnam coming out of high school in '66 and '67, and I didn't, none of us wanted to go and fight because the champ Muhammad Ali was saying, you know,
You wasn't going.
they never did anything to me, and that was our feeling at the time, and we didn't want to go and do any military thing, and then, so I had a couple of kids at that time, and I continued. There was a guy whose office was like a couple of buildings just down the street here on the other side. It was called the Wanamaker's Advertising Agency. Don Wanamaker was the president, and he owned that company. It's just a couple of buildings down the street. And back then, I thought I could draw up some things and take it to this advertising agency and get a job. And he's like, no, that's not the way this thing works. But Mr. Wanamaker, he was such a lovely man, and he cared so much for my talents, because he told me this is what he tried to do when he was young, and he sent me to the University of Cincinnati and wanted me to get a degree in art from there. And I went a couple of times and decided, no, I don't want an academic art education. He also paid for and sent me to the Dayton Art Institute. I went for a little while and said, no, I don't want an academic education. And I said, I'm gonna live or die based on what I was given to me by whoever. I'm gonna live or die by my skills and talents. And if I don't have the gift to do this thing as well as anybody else, then I don't deserve to be doing it. So that's what I did. I decided I'm gonna live or die to do this thing called art. And it would be foolish. I wouldn't tell my son. My son, as a matter of fact, who is 50 years old now, he wanted to do this art thing, but he didn't want to suffer for it. He didn't want to go through any of what I went through he didn't want to suffer. And he's doing fine now, but I was trying to share with him, that's what it took. And what you see I have and have done is because of the suffering that I've gone through for this thing. And I didn't want him to have to do that, and I wouldn't tell any child now, yeah, go on your skills and your talents, you're gonna make it in this world. Yes, but I'd be afraid for them. But there was nobody afraid for me. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
That was beautiful. I want to ask though, because you don't have, I guess, the formal training, for lack of better words, at least not in maybe the westernized sense.
There was a guy in Dunbar High School at the time, which was one hell of a school back in the 60s. And I'm telling you, my art teacher was named Emerson Harewood. His son was Durian Harewood, who's been a movie star. But Emerson, he gave me an F in art when I left. Yes, because I took it for granted. And he said, Ronnie, well, that was the way he sounded. But he wanted me to go to school and use this gift and this talent that I had. And I wanted to play with the girls. I wanted to play football. And I wanted to do everything else but get serious about that art. And it took me until I was almost 30 years old before I ever got serious with my art.
That doesn't sound too bad still to me though, personally, but would you say that with the lack of the so-called formal training, that you still had someone that you were maybe under, somebody that you called a mentor, somebody that you ever felt like you were an apprentice of?
I wish I had that. I didn't have the luxury of, as a matter of fact, I'd never been in an art gallery. I didn't think black people did this thing. excuse me, other than my brothers and the people in my family, I didn't know black people could actually succeed with art. You know, I didn't know that. And my parents, and they didn't say, hey, you're gonna make it someday, let me support you with this. No, I had no idea. I just had to continue to do it, enjoy and paint and draw funny pictures, caricatures of my brothers and people around me. As I said, the smell of oil paint, I made much money by taking Q-tips and smearing oil paint on black and white, because back then, all of our class pictures were in black and white. So I could do a 5x7 for $3 or something like that, and an 8x10 for $4 or something like that. And that's where that was my introduction to portrait painting, was doing photographs in high school. You know, yes.
Can you describe a little bit about this picture right here? It looks politically motivated.
Yeah.
But,
I did a piece some years ago, and I was telling some of the other people who were here earlier, called Confrontations, playing on the word confrontation. The way we have been, we're especially now, we've been clashing with one another because of the colors of our skins. And so I had thought of, well, is it our fault, or is it some other forces that have brought us against one another? So the original piece that I did, and this is the second one, the original piece was Confrontations, which is this piece here. That was the first time I did the idea. And I have something coming from above, manipulating us like pawns against one another. And on the original piece, you can see there's like a United States of America as a part of the floor. And this was just my thinking at the time. It's some other forces that have caused us to be confronting one another. And again, I played on the word confrontations by calling it confrontation. And so I did that piece, and that was one of the pieces that went back in Chicago, which he had mentioned. And I went on with the idea and thought that, well, I'll continue with it. I'll just get real literal with this daggone thing. I think that the money that we don't seem to have enough of is being manipulated by, again, other forces, someone other than ourselves, and we are coming into conflict with one another over it. And that's why I have the grounds that it's a chessboard, actually, and the grounds that we're on, and the manipulation by somebody else dropping little bags of money that explode on the ground, and we fight one another over it. But again, I didn't want us killing one another with lethal weaponry. And so I said, well, I'll put brooms in our hands, and we'll sweep the money up and maybe split it at some time. But I didn't want us killing one another over this other force. And again, I wanted because that was my total frame of reference. Africa was always Africa. And
Now you can see the image.
And so that's why that came about. And the owner of the original Confrontation is a guy named Jory Luster. I don't even know if he's still alive today, but he owns that piece today. Of Luster Silk in Chicago.
That's fabulous.
Now, did you paint yourself into that painting? I was wondering.
I didn't, and yes, I did, in a sense. You know, it's us. It's people You know,
I see a little
like,
resemblance, though.
please.
I see a little resemblance.
You might.
Yeah.
You might, but I really wasn't trying.
Ronnie, is it true that you put the shape of Africa in all of your?
And many of them I did. But you know, I pulled myself away from that because as I've gotten older, there's so much of the world, and as I've experienced much more of the world than being here in Dayton, Ohio, coming out of oppression and slavery, and so all I can depict in my artwork is oppression and what have you. I moved to Seattle. I lived in Seattle, and I saw so many beautiful, beautiful things, and I wanted to speak about all of that too that I didn't see here. I got paintings in right on my fireplace now of Mount Rainier. Beautiful, beautiful, you know, things that we haven't been exposed to. So I said, let me expose. If I want to expose us to something, what about some other things other than our oppression as a people? But I wanted to say something about Africa, no matter what I did. And here Africa appears in this piece here, you know. And I wanted to make a statement about winter and summer. I was coming back from Chicago. I had won some show there, and I went to a motel. The Night's Inn it was, and there was. And there was a little window in these motels, you know, little window in the back of the motel, and I peek out of the motel and I see the guys and over here would have been cars parked on this side and concrete and what have you on that side. So in my mind, I eliminated everything and pulled from that what I thought was just the beauty of nature, and I had another opportunity to add Africa again. So I've done that in a lot of pieces everywhere that I looked, but I didn't want to lose Africa. I just didn't want to be fixed on only Africa because we are children and people of the world.
All right.
You know, and I thought if I have a gift, I should share that gift about the world, and that's why I did it like that.
One more question.
Oh, sure, no, it's fine.
Have you been to Africa?
No, not phically. No, not yet, and I'd love to do that. I'd love, before I leave this life, I love it, and I know what I do. I get there and I come back, and I want to share with my skills what it is I've seen, but what it is that I think was important about that experience. The whole experience would be important, but what I'd want to share about that experience and how I could amplify something about that experience. Not just something how we've killed one another, harmed one another. Not necessarily that. I don't know what it would be that I'd want to say. But that one is called The Resurrection of Soul. That was a piece. And the print's not here. I've got him at home. If you look closely, you'll see on that, it's like a sarcophagus. And it's the date 1967 on the sarcophagus. I got these brothers going down, digging down, like people have done with the pyramids of Egypt. But they went down and they discovered 1967, the resurrection of soul, because that's when I remember during that period we suddenly realized that we were beautiful. Black is beautiful. Picks in our hair, dashikis, and Black Power and all that, it turned into a bunch of problems. But it was a realization that we didn't have to process our hair and try to look like somebody else. And that was to me a discovery of ourselves and our beauty. This was back in 67. And so that piece was called The Resurrection of Soul. An attorney again in Chicago owns the original there. And that won another one of the best of shows there in Chicago. But that's what I was trying to say with that piece. It's called The Resurrection of Soul. And you see, you saw a watermelon in there. It was a symbol that we should shun, but I wanted to use that symbol so to make a statement about what it was we discovered, and we discovered again about ourselves, about our beauty. And I love watermelon, you know. So that's why I do that. So yeah, that's what that meant for me.
All right. Well, thanks. Everybody give him
All right, Ronnie.